At Flint's News Talk, 1470 WFNT. We're joined by Dr. Marc Edwards from Virginia Tech. Sir, how are you?
Very good, sir.
It's nice to talk to you again. So there's a little bit of a brouhaha going on here regarding the your testimony at the preliminary exam in Nick Lyons' trial, and also the complaint that you filed with LAR, with the State Licensing Regulation Authority. So tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Well, in relation to the trial testimony, what I put out there was what we've been saying on our blog site all along, that our working hypothesis based on our reading of the emails is that most of the criminal actions were done by a few employees at MDEQ, and while we're open to new input, and we're always looking, we see it divided up in terms of people who are telling lies and other people who are believing lies. So folks can go to our website because we put all the emails up there for themselves, but nothing was presented to me in the trial that changed our opinion.
So one of the things with respect to Dr. McElmurray, who got a grant, at first collaborator. In fact, you introduced him to folks here. You got the $3.35 million from the FATCHUP grant to do some more investigating here. But but with respect to Legionella,
yes,
the question is, did you wrote in your piece in 2016 that DHHS was silent about their findings that there was elevated lead in blood. They didn't,
oh yes.
So they didn't come out and share that.
Right, and I called them unethical publicly in September, and a few days later they reversed course and agreed with both Dr. Mona and ourselves that there was a real problem.
Okay, so that's blood lead levels.
Right, and in terms of the Legionella, I want to point out that there's really no significant disagreement between any of the researchers about what happened in Flint. We had the original hypothesis that the outbreak, a Legionella outbreak, would occur in Flint, but all of our sampling, as well as that of FATCHUP, has shown that the Legionella levels in the homes were quite low. We published 2 peer-reviewed papers that showed that the Legionella outbreak was, in fact, triggered by the switch. We stand by that to this day, and FATCHUP recently wrote a paper that confirmed that. I think the only real question is where was the risk, and all of our data shows that the risk was in large buildings like McLaren.
And I read, and I read your 2016 paper, and that's exactly what you said. So the question in terms of culpability, though, and that's obviously the legal question. How do you come to the conclusion that, I mean, what is it that the prosecution suggests? Where does the culpability lie with DHHS, and why would you say that that's unfounded?
Well, in terms of the culpability, so the laws that we have, the standards that we have for controlling Legionella in this country, there are none for the drinking water system operation. All of the responsibility rests on large building owners to protect their occupants. And so while the switch did trigger growth of Legionella in the large buildings, according to the current standards, the harm that's done to the building occupants should have been prevented by having a Legionella defense system. And what really happened in Flint was the weak defenses of many buildings were exposed, and that's our hypothesis. So all of these things are true. Both the switch to Flint River triggered the outbreak, and a lot of the disease was associated with large buildings in general, and in particular a hospital or two.
Were there any homes in which there was Legionella, and who's responsible at that point?
Well, there's homes all across the country that have Legionella in them, and one of the shocking things about Flint in terms of our study and FATCHUP's is that the levels of Legionella that we could find in Flint's homes were lower than they were in other parts of the country. So there's always risk of
Did that-
Legionella. There's no such thing as a safe bath or shower, completely safe in America. But all of our evidence, including during the height of the Legionella outbreak in 2015, showed the risk of Legionella in homes in Flint was shockingly low, and we're still trying to figure out why that's the case.
Does that agree? Does that also agree with the FOSHEP research?
Mm-hmm. Yes, all of their data. They collected some in 2015. Their recent reports have shown that the levels of Legionella tend to be lower than what's considered average for the United States.
Okay, so let me ask you this now. Why the complaint against Dr. McElmurray?
Oh my goodness! Well, here we are. This is 2.5+ years after I first talked to you, and we've seen government scientist misconduct. We've seen pseudoscientists come to town, anarchists come to town, and now we've got possible scientific misconduct by professors. And I keep thinking we've seen it all, but the complaint is a very, very serious one. When Dr. McElmurray reached out to me in the fall of 2015, he told me many things. And of the things that I'm now looking back on, the only things I can verify as true are his name, and then he wanted money. So amongst the things that he said were that he'd been working in Flint for more than 5 years, that he had working models of the distribution system, that he knew people in Flint, that he'd counseled Mayor Walling. And of course, this was critical information, so I believed him, and I brought him into the inner circle of people working on the Flint water crisis, and ultimately he was given a sole source contract, Dan. Sole source. This almost never happens in academia, where someone says, you are the person we are giving this money to, you handpick your team to do the response. And the only qualification he had, the only reason he was even allowed into this was because of his claim he worked in Flint for all those years.
So, I mean, is this who else bid on the funding? Were there
no
any
one was allowed to. It was sole source because of his claim that he'd been there for 5 years and knew the lands, the intimate knowledge he claimed of the water system.
Okay.
So, this is a very serious issue because here we've got a federal emergency. And if you are misrepresenting your qualifications, and realize I've tried to clarify this with him over a period of months, and he's refused to answer my questions. And ultimately, I talked to other people, including Mayor Walling, other professors working with him. No one has been able to verify that he was working in Flint in that time frame.
So I reached out to Dane Walling as well. And he says he doesn't recall. He said he remembers Purdue. He says Wayne State was involved as well. He doesn't specifically recall, but it was a lot of years ago being counseled by him. So he basically confirmed what you'd said at flintwaterstudy.org. I also reached out to Casey Faust, to Dr. Faust, and she emailed me a comment that I'm allowed to share. I was dismayed to learn about the accusations that my research was used by someone else to obtain grant funding. I'm very proud of the work I did in Flint. However, due to the ongoing legal situation, I don't feel it's appropriate to comment at this time and beyond that. And I got her permission to use that as her sole comment. We're going to talk to her hopefully down the road. She expressed interest in talking about some of the research that she did. You filed this complaint back at the beginning of March. Is that correct?
That's correct. When we first realized that he wasn't going to answer our questions and that we felt very, very strongly that he'd misrepresented his qualifications for the sole source grant, and which set in motion, frankly, his disastrous leadership of this group of professors has created long-term problems, including the felony charges. And you got to realize, 2 of the charges against Dr. Wells and Mr. Lyon were because of their trying to manage this group of professors. Mm-hmm. And it was alleged that they were obstructing justice in 2016 after, this is more than a year after the Legionella outbreak occurred, mind you.
Right.
And they're just trying to manage this person and having very little luck. I've read the emails, and it's just really outrageous. And they're being charged with a felony for trying to get their money's worth on this grant.
Did anyone talk to when were you called as a witness? When did you know that you would be testifying in his trial? And
I was subpoenaed probably 3 months ago at first, and then the whole thing was delayed. I was subpoenaed again, and I finally subpoenaed a third time. That was probably a month ago. So I've been subpoenaed 3 times, but this thing is just dragging out forever.
Well, did anyone from the defense talk to you about these charges that you filed with Lara?
No, I've made myself available to all parties. I did interview with the defense team back a year ago, and I will answer all questions from all parties related to this. I've made it clear I will be subpoenaed by anyone, and I will come and tell what I know.
Yeah, that's one thing I have to say. Your availability is, anytime, anywhere, whenever we call you, and we sure appreciate it and all the time that you've put into this. What? I guess, where do you think this goes from here? How long is the Lara process going to take?
Oh, that will take months. We've also submitted an allegation of scientific misconduct with National Institutes of Health, and this is very, very serious, Dan. You cannot misrepresent your qualifications on a federal grant to get funds during an emergency. I mean, this is really serious stuff, and there's also I've got the emails, and I think it's very, very clear that Dr. McElmurray took Dr. Faust's research and pretended it was his in order to get that money.
Now, obviously, this is tangential to the trial. I mean, people can say this goes to credibility, but does it affect anything that he said, as far as you can see, testimony-wise?
Oh, my gosh, absolutely. No, I put some of that testimony on my website, but you got to realize the felony charges against some of the felony charges against Wells and Lyons are related to them trying to manage Dr. McElmurray and this group of professors.
Yeah.
And if he is not qualified to lead that group, if he misrepresented his qualifications, you can understand how the friction could arise. So that whole part of the trial, those felony charges, are cast in a brand new light. I mean, up to this point, people have been presuming these are noble professors fighting these malign state employees, and of course the burden, and most people would suspect that the professors were doing the right thing. But after reading that testimony and looking into this, I come away with a totally different perspective on that. We put that on our website. Folks can read that, read the emails, and judge for themselves.
FlintWaterStudy.org. One last thing, Dr. Edwards. You said that things turned around for you. You got more cooperation from DHHS. How did that happen, and through whom? Were anyone in particular that you were working with that became more helpful?
Well, actually, both Dr. Mona and myself, from the time Eden Wells came on the scene, things started happening to help us get to the bottom of this. So we publicly thanked her on our website. But, you got to realize this is December 2015.
Right.
So we'd already called out everyone, all the bad actors, over and over again. So, it's all there in the historical record. But actually, the state has not really been fighting us that seriously since they threw in the towel in early October 2015. Yeah. And after that, they've been cooperating with us since January 2016.
So the timeline on the Legionella stuff, is it post 2015 then, or is it before that?
The Legionella outbreak actually ended in September of 2015. So this group of professors didn't start till practically a year after that outbreak occurred. And we have the only samples from Flint during the outbreak, and that was the basis of our paper and conclusions.
All right. Well, listen, appreciate your time and all you've done here to help City of Flint, Dr. Edwards.
Well, we'll keep fighting. Take care.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Dr. Marc Edwards, Virginia Tech. The number here is 743-8255. We're going to take a break. That's what I was getting from the paper and so forth, that there wasn't a lot of disagreement regarding the ultimate cause. Now, Dr. Edwards says that there is no legal standard in terms of Legionella, what you need to do, but the charge of manslaughter is related to not publicizing this, and whether or not they were publicizing it, apparently, for the prosecution, has to do with whether or not they were hiding whether or not the outbreak went further than the hospitals.
Right.
Whether or not there was a house that had it. Edwards says that there's that the incidences of Legionella are low, in Flint were low, but that they did predict it, and they predicted it in specific places like hospitals. And again, it's because the environment was created as a result of the mistreatment of the water, in which the bacteria could thrive.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and the accusation then is if scientists and researchers and health officials knew that there was a potential, some are saying they should have been putting it in the newspaper and shouting it from the rooftops that Legionella is a problem, and since they didn't, they're responsible for people contracting it, dying from it, so on and so forth. But if there's no standard, I mean, you can see both sides of it. If somebody knows something, you should make it
should get it out
readily available,
especially the Department of Health and Human Services.
Right, but if not, can you hide behind? Well, there's nothing that tells me I should, so I'm not going to say anything. So that's a matter of ethics as opposed to legality.
It's more than a matter of ethics, because there's a trial going on with 2 people charged with felonies, as Dr. Edwards pointed out, and so we'll see. And it's been a long preliminary exam. This has been the longest, I think, in the history of the city.
Yeah.
So this is going to take some time to get through all this. What did you make of that? 743-8255 is the number to call. 743-8255. Our appreciation for the time Dr. Edwards gave us to talk about that. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. Flint's News Talk, 1470 WFNT. Back right after this.